Faith feels hardest right when you need it most. Not when you're drifting, not when you're rebellious, but when you're exhausted from praying the same prayer and nothing has changed. That's usually when people panic. They assume something is wrong with them, that their faith is slipping, that God feels distant because they've failed somehow. But what if faith doesn't feel hard because it's weak? What if it feels hard because it's finally being used? Here's something most people aren't told. Faith is easiest when it's theoretical, when it doesn't cost you anything yet, when belief is supported by circumstances, emotions, and outcomes. But desperation removes all of that. Desperation strips away emotional reinforcement. It removes the sense of control. It puts you in a place where belief is no longer supported by evidence, only by trust. And that's uncomfortable, because desperation doesn't just ask, "Do you believe?" It asks, "Will you stay when belief no longer feels rewarding?" That's why faith feels so hard when you need it most. Not because you've become weak, but because the environment has changed. Pressure distorts perception. When you're desperate, your mind shifts into survival mode. You become hyper-focused on relief, resolution, escape. And when relief doesn't come quickly, your brain interprets the delay as danger. That's when God starts to feel distant, not because he moved, but because desperation narrows your vision. You stop looking for presence and start scanning for outcomes. You stop asking, "Is God with me?" and start asking, "Why hasn't God fixed this yet?" And when the answer doesn't arrive immediately, faith begins to feel fragile. But here's what you need to understand. Fragile faith is still faith. Scripture never says faith must feel strong to be real. It says it must be held. Think about this. If faith only worked when you felt confident, it wouldn't be faith at all. It would just be agreement with circumstances. Real faith begins when certainty ends. That's why desperation feels so disorienting, because it forces you to trust without emotional confirmation. And that exposes something important. Many people don't lose faith in desperate moments. They lose the version of faith that depended on comfort. They lose the version that assumed peace would always come quickly, the version that expected clarity on demand, the version that confused God's presence with emotional calm. And when that version collapses, they assume faith itself is gone. But it's not gone. It's being refined. Desperation removes illusions. It shows you whether your faith was anchored in God or in what you hoped God would do. That doesn't make you a bad believer. It makes you an honest one. Even Jesus acknowledged this tension. In the garden, facing suffering he knew was coming, he didn't say, "This is easy because I trust the Father." He said, "If it's possible, let this pass from me." That wasn't a lack of faith. That was faith under pressure. Faith that speaks honestly. Faith that stays present even when relief doesn't come. Faith that remains when escape is unavailable. That's the kind of faith desperation produces, and the enemy hates it. So instead of attacking faith directly, he attacks your interpretation. He whispers, "If God were really with you, this wouldn't feel so heavy. If your faith were real, you wouldn't feel this uncertain. If God cared, he would have already moved." And if you believe those thoughts, desperation turns into distance. You stop praying, not because you don't believe, but because you feel ashamed for struggling. You stop reaching out, not because you don't trust God, but because you think your faith isn't good enough anymore. And slowly, faith doesn't disappear. It just goes quiet. But silence doesn't mean absence. Sometimes silence is what happens when God is close enough that words aren't the point anymore. Sometimes the quiet isn't God leaving, it's God listening. Desperation invites a different kind of faith. Not faith that feels powerful, not faith that feels confident, but faith that stays. Faith that says, "I don't understand this. I don't feel strong right now. I don't see the outcome yet, but I'm still here." That kind of faith doesn't look impressive. It doesn't post well. It doesn't feel victorious, but it's real, and it's often the faith God trusts the most. Because anyone can believe when the answer is obvious. Anyone can have faith when the outcome is guaranteed. Anyone can trust when they can see 3 steps ahead. But you're believing in the dark. You're trusting when you can't see. You're holding on when letting go would be easier. That's not weak faith. That's warrior faith. That's the faith that moves heaven, not because it's loud, but because it refuses to let go. So if you're in a desperate season right now, where belief feels harder than it used to, where prayers feel heavier, where hope feels fragile, this doesn't mean your faith is dying. It means it's being stripped down to what actually lasts. You're not failing God by struggling. You're not disappointing Him by feeling weak. You're not losing faith because it feels hard to hold. Faith was never meant to feel easy in moments like this. It was meant to remain. And if you're still here, still searching, still listening, still hoping, even quietly, that is faith. Not loud, not confident, but real. The faith that whispers, "I'm still here," when everything in you wants to run. That's the faith that carries you through. That's the faith that survives the fire. That's the faith that, when this is over, you'll look back on and realize it was stronger than you ever knew. Your faith isn't failing. It's just being tested in a way comfort never required. And what's being revealed isn't weakness. It's the kind of strength that only desperation can forge. Stay, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that staying, that's faith in its purest form.